Hey, what's up, boys and girls? James Newbury here and Maddie Legg with the Phyba Performance Podcast. Today we're going to be ripping into some amazing things from all around the world, some sick ingredients that are going to turbocharge your lifestyle and just maximize how much you get out of the gym and out of yourself. Today's podcast is just going to be me and Maddie, but it's going to be pretty in-depth on some really cool biology that we're really stoked about talking about. Matt's been diving deep on this stuff for the last handful of years, but more intensely in the last probably 12 months or so. This stuff is pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. We're going to rip straight in. So this is the Phyba Performance Podcast, episode number 16, coming at you from Burleigh, Gold Coast, Australia. Here we go. Maddie, let's rip in.
All right. Well, that was a big intro. Now I feel a lot of pressure, actually. But no, I have been excited. I've been texting him the Eureka sort of things in the middle of the night and printing off papers for James to read. Going, you got to read this. It's so exciting. I realise a lot of people don't see the same level of excitement as I do in some of these boring PDF papers. But man, it is full on when you get your head around some of the concepts. So one of the things that I've been working on for a while, I've been a naturopath for 25 years and I've been obsessed with the holistic aspect of being a naturopath. You know, we know that you need the right combinations of a good healthy lifestyle that includes good routine, good exercise, good living with a good diet, and you also need a good microbiome to work with your genetics. And the old word, we used to call that holistic medicine, but the new word for that is epigenetics. And the actual end result of that is our epigenetic expression, which basically decides who's going to be amazing and who's going to be sick. It's quite an interesting concept because we realize that you could have a great diet, but if you've got a crappy lifestyle and you've got the wrong gut bugs, it just doesn't work for you. Vice versa, you could be supplementing with everything that you want, but if you have the wrong lifestyle and you don't have the good microbiome to convert it properly, it just simply doesn't work. Then we also realize that there's key features in regards to high-performing individuals, like athletes and successful entrepreneurs, people that are killing it in life. They tend to have these certain sort of profiles around them, certain habits or certain microorganisms, certain foods in their diet, and we'll often pick and choose which ones of those we want to apply to our life and hopefully get the same results, but it's the holistic picture. Now, what makes me so excited about that is when you're looking at a holistic picture, it's all like a big mind map. And when you find a missing link in this mind map, when you find, I couldn't work out how that happened, and when that science catches up to explain one of those things, you have your most amazing eureka moments. So, for example, with the microbiome, for years we've been looking at different strains of probiotics that we see in healthy people. And we had the assumption that if we supplement that probiotic, then everyone's going to be as healthy as that person that had that bug. But we worked out it's not that simple. You've still got to have the lifestyle and the diet to support that bug survival, and we don't even know if the probiotics are even going to work usually in regards to seeding. So then we worked out is how does someone get the benefit from a healthy lifestyle with a healthy gut and a healthy diet? And it's through the metabolites that are made by the microbiome when they feed on certain foods in a certain environment. So this is where it gets a bit complicated, because what we need to do is make sure that we're actually creating the right metabolites. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have the bugs, but you're eating the right food and doing the right lifestyle, you can't make those metabolites, which is why when you're doing the training, you're just not hitting the same levels as an elite athlete that might have this right combination. It's definitely not about genetics. I mean, our genetics only making up a couple of percent of the whole story. We got 22,000 genes, our microbiome is 3.3 million genes, straight up. There's more genetic material from other bugs than us. So don't blame your genetics, it's the combination. Now, one of the things that I discovered when trying to piece this all together was I started analysing the metabolites made by the microbiome and how they benefit the athlete or the people. And was there a way that we could kind of cut to the chase and supply those postbiotic metabolites directly and give you the same benefits? And so that's where I got really excited, because we found some of these postbiotic metabolites are things like these things called short-chain fatty acids. So short-chain fatty acids are like energy molecules that are kind of made out of fiber, but they're energy nutrients for the microbiome. They're direct energy for your gut mucosa. Like if you can imagine your gut lining is totally covered in bugs, all the food, everything that your gut lining needs to be healthy and good is going to be in the food directly. So it doesn't need to go take it out of your bloodstream as such. So the gut wall feeds directly from the microbiome, supplying nutrients directly to that gut wall. And that's where these short chain fatty acids are so amazing. Is that is the fuel for the gut, for the cells, the mitochondria of the tissues that build your gut lining. Yeah, and those same compounds are not just supplied directly to the intestinal mucosa and all quenched there and used up there, but they have a systemic effect. They're also released systemically. And what they're finding is some of these short chain fatty acids, in particular one that I'm excited about is butyrate. Butyrate is brilliant because it actually stimulates a lot of energy production in the mitochondria. It helps mitochondria energy warehouse of every cell. It's a direct fuel. So yeah, the gut lining needs that to do all the gut lining things, but our whole body needs it. Our liver needs it to process toxins and everything like that. Our muscle cells need it. Our brain, it's our preferred source of fuel in our brain. And this is how we're finding the links between the gut-brain axis, the gut-muscle axis, the gut-liver axis, and we're finding a gut-immune axis, gut inflammation and antioxidant pathways. These short-chain fatty acids are driving most of those processes. Yeah,
and now super interesting.
It is, hey, because and this is when they go back then and say, oh, our biggest deficiency in our diet is the fibre, because the fibre is what ferments and converts into short chain fatty acids, and then those short chain fatty acids are released through the bloodstream and have an anti-inflammatory effect or antioxidant effect, which is how fibre can prevent heart disease. That's how they do it. And then they talk about fibre preventing bowel problems and inflammatory bowel conditions. Again, the same way. The fibre converts to butyrate, and the butyrate does those things.
Interesting.
If you don't have the right gut bugs and you're eating the right fibre, you don't make the butyrate.
Yeah, right.
And that's what they're actually finding in people with inflammatory bowel disease, colonic disorders and that sort of stuff. As an athlete, what also happens is you travel a lot, you have a lot of stress, you're taking supplements, your food may vary, stuff like that. But there are also big times where you're exposed to lots of stress in regards to inflammation, heat shock, even altitude stuff, stress itself. All of those sort of things will actually shut down the requirement for your gut to function, to fuel basically the muscles and brain. And in that instance, it'll actually take these short chain fatty acids, say, don't bother building up a healthy gut wall right now. We're going to flood the bloodstream with us and use this as fuels, and still have enough there to quench the gut lining and protect it. So what I've found fascinating about short chain fatty acids is there's a whole heap of data where they've supplemented them directly to see if it compensates or if it works for the people that aren't capable of making it. And it works brilliantly. And it doesn't have any of those bad side effects or negativity, in the sense that it's something that your gut microbiome would normally make. It's something that's made from fibre. It's something that's found in butter and ghee and cheese and a lot of other compounds where these compounds were made and inside the food. So you'll find butyrates are naturally occurring in lots of foods, even some fermented foods and that sort of stuff that's made from the fibre. But otherwise, we're constantly making in our gut if we've got the right gut bugs and we've got the right fibre coming through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so we're still capable of utilizing, say, if we were to orally take, say, short chain fatty acids,
yeah,
we can, even if we don't have the gut bugs that would typically create them, we can still utilize and put them into our bloodstream, utilize them in our brain. We can help increase immunity and do all these really cool things that we would have not been able to do otherwise if we can take them on. And if that's the case, what type of is butyrate the one compound or the one molecule, or do we have multiple?
Well, so with butyrate, the problem is with butyrates, when we make it through fermentation, they're usually made in the lower part of the intestine. So to take them orally through the top, that's only certain foods do that. So what normally would happen is we use a thing like tributrin. Well, they do either sodium butyrate or tributrin. Tributrin I like better because what tributrin is they've basically bonded 3 butyrate molecules through to a fatty acid molecule, and it allows it to get further down the digestive tract before being liberated, which means you get more of the butyrate that's available for the colonic mucosa and healing up that gut wall, preventing leaky gut wall and that sort of stuff, and supporting that initial first line of defense. and then you'll still get a certain amount being absorbed and having a systemic effect. The sodium butyrate, it's a little bit shorter acting, also tastes terrible because short chain fatty acids, they're made through bacterial fermentation. I mean, they're the compounds in farts, so you can't expect them to taste fantastic. But when you combine them into a tributylin, you're offsetting that flavour profile and allowing it to move further down in your gut, so you get better compliance. Plus, they do a lot more. I think it's more stable as well, because a lot of the animal studies, for example, with livestock and that sort of stuff. So when they've done studies on cattle and horses, sheep and that sort of stuff, these are animals that are out exposed to the elements with a certain amount of feed. And at the end of the day, they're trying to make sure that they stay healthy long enough so that they maintain and build good muscle and bulk up, before they go to market. Terrible sounding story, but when they add tributylin to their feedlot, it actually makes them healthier. So they're the sort of animal studies I don't mind, in the sense that they're actually doing something to make the animals healthier. They found that with adding tributylin to the animal feed, that these animals significantly put on bulk muscle, lots more muscle. They also stopped a lot of the inflammation and damage. They even stopped a lot of the damage that happened from heat stress, and people stopped losing muscle when they're exposed to the elements and that sort of stress. An interesting thing is it also found that it reduced the likelihood of colitis or gut, loose stools and gut problems, infections and that sort of stuff, but it also stopped the muscle loss when you did. And I got a little bit excited about that because over all the years of treating athletes, the travelling gut, when you just travel, and just travelling is enough to give you the green apple splatters, or for you to lose, your integrity of your bowels and get looser stools and stuff like that. Or leaky gut wall. And then when you do that, what happens is you just get this leakiness in the gut wall where all these lipopolysaccharide, these compounds that come out of the microbes, just flood your body, and that's inflammatory, and that can cause a lot of muscle loss and a muscle fatigue. And that's the way when we travel we can lose performance, or it used to be a big problem with racehorses and that as well. But for athletes to do something when you're traveling to protect your gut lining from the occasional gut upset that might come from stress or bad food or just travel, this is one of the best ways to do it. That and citrulline. The combination of this with citrulline is phenomenal.
And so how would citrulline and, say, tributylin work together to, bring upon a...
That's a really good question, because most people look at citrulline as a source of arginine. Now, citrulline's become just a better way of doing arginine, when arginine was probably the most prescribed amino acid in the sports industry for years. Then they worked out citrulline was a better way of increasing arginine levels because it didn't get broken down as easily in around the gut. What's interesting is citrulline is made from glutamine, and we know glutamine to be famous for its ability to live in the gut wall, and it maintains the integrity of the gut wall. But so this is the problem. So when you're competing, when you're athletic, or when you're getting inflammation through your body, the citrulline, it's like a switch. Does your body want arginine right now, or does your body want glutamine? So if you can imagine the citrulline being that switch between that. So when you're under stress, when you're performing, when you're doing exercise, that citrulline will switch to arginine. Arginine creates nitric oxide that'll help your exercise performance as a vasodilator, but it's also involved in inflammation if your body's inflamed. So during that instance, citrulline will drive down the arginine process to flush blood out to your extremities. You don't have enough blood to be everywhere, so in doing that, it actually shuts down the blood supply to your gut via the vagus nerve, shuts down digestion, detox to favour survival instincts. Alternatively, when you're using citrulline, it can actually supplement. If you didn't have a big dose of citrulline, or just a trickle regularly coming through, to make that arginine, you would actually deplete the glutamine out of your gut to do it. And so the citrulline becomes a switch, almost like a safety net. So you can actually load up a state-dependent amino acid that can decide, based on your priorities that come from your immune system and your autonomic nervous system, whether your priority is rest and digest and maintaining gut integrity, or whether your priority is short-term survival and doing vasodilation to get you out of there. And citrulline can be the major catalyst between each one of those pathways. Because citrulline's gone into a part now where they talk about it as a vasodilator. So if you want to take citrulline today and get a big pump, and you've never taken citrulline before, then you'll need about 8 grams of citrulline to get the vasodilation effect, just out of the blue, force it to happen, as part of a pre-workout or something. But if you want to use citrulline for its ability to maintain the vasculature, protect your gut, look after your vasodilation and those other systems without just being a direct vasodilation inducer, then you want about 1.5 grams of citrulline is about what you want, up to 3 grams at the most, and you want that daily rather than having 8 grams once off a couple of days a week in a pre-workout. You're better off a low dose of citrulline every day. It helps to maintain that gut wall. There's even papers on citrulline that actually shows citrulline can stop the loss in muscle strength and also stop muscle loss and damage associated with gut inflammation and the liberation of lipopolysaccharide. So again, that lipopolysaccharide will destroy your muscle tissue if you let it. And this is where citrulline will come in and protect those tissues by improving the integrity of the gut wall.
So, and in saying that, if citrulline can do those really cool things for our muscles, I'm guessing it's also doing some really cool things in terms of if it's a vasodilator as well, but also really good stuff for our recovery processes too.
Yeah.
So when we want to, we bang ourselves up in the gym or a competition, or, we're lifting weights or we're swimming, as we go to recover, obviously we want to increase as much blood flow as we possibly can. We want to start, we want to get that lymphatic system moving, and even to the point of sleep as well, when that lymphatic system is working through the roof, we want to try and expel all of these byproducts or toxins or compounds that are derived from exercise, thought, all these different types of things that we're using, and we're finding these byproducts. If our veins and arteries and all of those things are working really, really, really well, we can recover faster. Am I on the right line?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's a lot of it. But plus also our energy efficiency and our ability to burn fuel properly, which I want to talk a lot more about in a sec. But back to that tributrin. Tributrin, when they supplement tributrin to add that level of short-chain fatty acids into our intestine to compensate for the fact that we may not be making enough of it because of poor dietary choices, poor microbes, whatever. When we add in, and there's some wicked studies on it. Hey, they showed even in one study, this is the type of animal studies I do not like, and I do not think should be done really. Like, they've done a whole heap of animal studies again to see if tributrin may protect the gut lining from various types of stresses, including alcohol binging. So in this instance, they go through, they get mice and rats and all sorts of animals. They load them up on tributrin daily, but then what they do is expose them to alcohol as if they've gone and shots. A lot of pissed rats. Just for Fridays they typically do this one. And then what they do is they see how much damage gets done to the gut lining and how much done to the liver. And there's like 6 studies just straight up on different animals showing that if you take tributrin regularly, you have high levels of tributrin in your gut, you can actually reduce the damaging effects from binging on alcohol.
Wow.
So if you have a look at something like tributrin, that might, as a prophylactic, you take it regularly, it might help to protect your gut when you're traveling, it might help to protect your gut when you're having a bit of a binge after it. If you get exposed to heat shock and that sort of stuff, that really causes gut problems and destroys that gut wall, it protects you against that as well.
Interesting.
But then when I had a look at it, it's also one of the major preferred sources of fuel. It can directly drive this mitochondria to produce more energy. It stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, so what a basic energy warehouse of every cell of our body, that where we have our Krebs cycle, the citric acid cycle, all this stuff we're talking about when we have energy production. It's mainly through the mitochondria. And every cell requires an energy warehouse, a battery pack in it to work, Man, there's so much freaky stuff I just keep going through, because this mitochondria, if you want to just go down a rabbit hole and that sort of stuff, research a mitochondria alone and the similarities between a mitochondria and a bacteria. Because the mitochondria is a bacteria. It's like there's a synergistic relationship at some stage where bacteria infected our cells and become an energy source for our cells, and it worked out and we kept doing it.
Wow.
So our energy warehouse, they believe to be at one stage of our evolution, was part of a bacteria, a merging of our cells with a bacteria that created this ability for us to generate more energy per cell. Wow. That really took us off. And then if you consider, sorry, I get kind of excited and wigged out a bit and start freaking out. But if you consider then tributrin is a short-chain fatty acid, meaning it is an energy production molecule made by bacteria to feed bacteria. And if we realize that the energy warehouse of every cell of our body is, for lack of a better definition, a bacteria, a symbiotic bacteria, then it kind of makes sense that this fuel designed for microbiome, made by the microbiome, is actually feeding our mitochondria and helping our ability to grow and adapt to physical and mental stress to become better.
Wow.
Which is also why they're showing it has this gut-brain axis ability to be smarter, improve nootropic, improve memory. In muscles, it's phenomenal what tributrin's been shown to do. Satellite cells, satellite cells.
Yeah.
Satellite cells are these weird cells that roam in and stimulate extra muscle growth, make more muscle.
Yeah.
And so when you get damaged muscle and you stretch the fascia and you get that swelling, again, that's where the vasodilation, the oxygen and that stuff story starts getting really cool. Because if you resemble an injury through swelling and stretching of the fascia without necessarily doing an injury, you trigger the same muscle growth, muscle recovery as if you'd broken that muscle and had to rebuild it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you haven't broken it and you're doing all that rebuilding, that's how you get bigger, stronger muscles. So what they found with tributrin is actually comes through and activates the satellite cell migration to tell the body to build more muscle. And then it also supports more mitochondria per muscle cell. So more energy warehouse, more muscles holding more energy warehouses, and those energy warehouses are designed to use this same stuff as a source of fuel, just like it would use glucose or fat or something like that.
Interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
So you're saying that tributrin can pretty much turbocharge not only your muscles to increase muscle size, but also increase the capacity to generate energy. That's game changer for any athlete wanting to get fitter, faster, stronger, more agile, think quicker.
And it is the compound that does it. So meaning that we don't have to give you a precursor that then, like, we don't give you resistant starch. Like, for example, the alternative way of making butyrate is to give you green banana resistant starch and hope that you've got a belly full of Akkermansia or something. And then if I do that, you're going to make the butyrate that is going to fuel your exercise performance. If you don't have that right bugs and you take that green banana resistant starch, you're going to get the farts and the guts and the distension and the bloating because the wrong bugs will get it and convert it into the wrong postbiotic metabolite. And this is what I'm saying. And this is where the loop is beautiful, because the bugs that make butyrate are the bugs that also feed on butyrate. So that's why they're making it. And so the cool thing is as we supplement your gut with the butyrate sources, it actually increases your ability to have the microbiome that makes more of it yourself.
It's so interesting because in saying that, we've spoken about this once before. The mitochondria is doing this process in creating energy, and the byproducts, we're looking to try and trigger a response to recycle those metabolites or the things that come out at the end and put them back into the system.
Yep.
Like you mentioned once to me before, like a turbo, we want to try and recycle this energy byproduct as much as we can so we can churn out at higher intensities for longer. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you consider, and that's kind of what we're realizing happens, so when you have a look at all your athletes, they do a certain amount of warm-up, or warm-up, we call it. Like the footy players, they'll run backwards and forwards. They're not warming up, man. These guys are, like, that to me looks like they've done like a fair bit of work. They're not just loosening up and stretching.
No, it's priming.
Yeah,
it's priming
and
the
it's
engine.
the lactate threshold. They're priming the engine to get to that thing. And what the lactate threshold technically is a point where apparently we've accumulated so much waste that we're ready to go. Now that paradoxically doesn't make sense. And because of the way they always talked about this waste, such things as lactic acid and that being this waste, that when it accumulates, it contributes to fatigue. So why would we work to get to a point of a lactate threshold where we can perform? It doesn't make sense until we realise that we have this, we're not a bench top, we're not yogurt, basically. We're more cultured than yogurt. And the reason why I said we're not yogurt is a lot of the anatomy physiology data in the textbook still talking about lactic acid as if it's in sauerkraut or yogurt and sitting in a jar. But the reality is, as in a human body, this lactic acid, when it builds up to a certain level, lactic acid doesn't really exist. It just goes straight back into the Krebs cycle where one lactic acid molecule makes two pyruvate molecules, and that pyruvate drives straight back into fuel. So what we're finding is a lot of these things like these short-chain fatty acids, a lot of these other compounds that support mitochondrial energy production, and you'll see a lot of the old data before they really worked out this redox system, this ability to recycle the waste, just like a turbo engine. The recycle the waste, they before they worked that out, I fucking totally lost my train of thought there. I can edit that bit out when we get there. But what I was saying is with the recycling of the waste, we wanted things that drive up the mitochondrial energy production pathway. And in the papers, you'll see it supports mitochondria. And as a byproduct, it reduces lactate or reduces lactic acid. Schisandras, pomegranates, and those sort of things, they drive that acid back into the Krebs cycle. When you've got adequate things like citrulline and everything like that, that's also driving the oxygen there through the vasodilation. This is how you get a turbocharge. We actually take the unmetabolized waste or the incomplete combustion, the fuel that hasn't burnt properly. We drive it back into the cells with a big dose of oxygen to get this big power output. That adds to the efficiency of the energy production in every cell of your body, but also reduces the accumulation of the waste that could contribute to poor muscle contractions and ultimately fatigue. But it doesn't do it just by buffering the acid. It does it by utilizing that acid as the preferred fuel source, which is now what we've discovered is the preferred fuel source, is actually what we thought was a metabolic waste, just driving it back in.
Wow. So it not only works across pathways for, maybe triggering an epigenetic expression, but it also triggers, vasodilation. It also triggers getting the cell to work and increase capacity to work harder and faster and longer and more efficiently. But then it probably also is working along not only that epigenetic pathway too, but then also if we have healthy cells that live a long time, it's increasing the longevity aspect of our whole system at the same time.
Yeah.
So what we're kind of saying is,
but if you consider this lactic acid thing, sorry to interrupt there, but just to add on to that. So when you're actually in that lactic acid stage and it's driving through these processes with the mitochondria, you learn more. You're smarter. Like your memory's better. You get proper muscle memory under lactic acid. That's why they make the military people get all buggered and then go, right, pull your gun apart and put it back together. You can learn things while under stress and under lactic acid that you'll never forget.
Your heightened state of mind?
I don't know, survival. I mean, in your body, it's a survival situation, and our whole body's about acquiring new techniques all the time to survive.
Yes.
And so it's like, I did this last time, I survived, so let's do it again next time. We'll add that to my repertoire of things that I do when I'm stressed,
Interesting.
And then, because I survived last time. So if you look at lactic acid, improves memory. It improves technique and form. So if you're learning your exercises, you're doing your technique and form while loaded up with the lactates, and in that you actually get better muscle memory. So then we're looking at lactate also has the ability to convert the white fat, that's our storage form of fat, into the brown fat, which is our burning fat, which is why it's important just to be regularly training and keeping into that level of soreness and tension that we have when we're training regularly, to know that your fat cells are constantly exposed to this thing. It'll actually convert the white fat that might be marbling through your biceps and reducing your muscle definition into the brown fat that could fuel your exercise.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
Far out. That's the concepts are just insane, and I think we're learning so much more about a lot of these, especially the gut microbiome and how it plays a role. Like I think for a lot of athletes, we think, eat some carbohydrates, go work out, eat some protein and this is making it basic, and that's completely fine. Eat some protein to recover and have some fats for, probably most people resemble fats as, maybe a source of fuel or a source of brain fuel, or, making sure the integrity of our cells is kept in good nick. But what we're finding more and more, that it's not just the carbohydrates in for the muscles to work, it's also how efficient and how healthy is your gut microbiome. And this goes back to the holistic approach. It's not just about fueling for performance, it's about being whole as a human to fuel performance. And that comes along and this is what we talk about so much, as when you're there's not much difference between someone who wants to be a high functioning human and an elite athlete. The only difference is to the degree and the hours that you put into doing it. But doing the things as a base level, as a foundation to be healthy, smart, happy, joyful, do all the things that you want to do. And then when you want to become an elite athlete, you just do them harder and more intense and for longer. And you might just focus solely on that and be a little bit more selfish in a way to get what you want, which is this high performing ultimate, vehicle. Now, when we look at those types of things, we might be training for 4 hours a day instead of going and do our 45-minute or 60-minute class. But in saying that, all of the factors that we need to do all these things are the same. It's just the degree at which you do them. And as a base, and I think we both agree that if the gut microbiome is working holistically with our lifestyle, we have the right bugs, we're fueling that gut microbiome with the right fuel, the nutrition, the effects of that, the lifestyle, the nutrition, the training, that also then has such a positive effect on the way that we think day to day and how joyful we are. And at the end of the day, it's all about having fun, being joyful, finding excitement, finding what fires you up to get out of bed. And if we're doing all those things, we're on the right track. If you're not doing those things, you're doing yourself a disservice. And all of these compounds that we're producing in the gut go such a long way into fueling that performance, and maybe getting a PR next week in the gym, or running a faster 5K, or just being at a higher base level of happy throughout the day. That's it.
Yeah. And so for the 25 years being a naturopath, we always taught to find the cause and treat the cause. And the problem is that things can take ages, and then it's hard to maintain patient compliance. People want to feel good straight away, but plus you need the energy to do things. I can tell you, go do those things, but when you come to me as a naturopath and say, my big problem is fatigue, I'm shattered. I'm waking up tired, I'm going to bed tired, I'm totally unrefreshed. And I come to you and go, man, you know what you need to do? You need to exercise. You need to get up and do this, and you need to do that. I'm going to add all this extra stuff. And this person's going, seriously, didn't you listen to me? I told you I've got fatigue. I can't even move. I'm flat out lifting my arms. I'm that tired, So what excites me about this sort of stuff is, for years as a naturopath, we're sitting there going, okay, well, I need you to eat these fermented foods. I need you to eat these precursors. I need to start doing this exercise. You've got to have all the three things happening at once for it to work. And the problem is we never had access to these tools, or we didn't really understand how these tools work to give someone a short-term boost. Because if I can cut to the chase, if I know that I can fix your fatigue by fixing your gut, fixing your diet, because when I do that, you make this particular compound. If I can just give you that compound now, so you can see how it feels when you take it, see how it feels to have this compound made from my gut and what energy it gives me, then you'll have the energy to do the diet and the exercise that you need to maintain it. So when I try to formulate with these sort of things, I always try to make sure that we give someone the feeling that you want now.
Yeah.
Not in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, or not where you're going to get worse before you get better.
Sure.
I want you to feel good straight away, because I know that's not only the motivation and drive that you need, but it also is the energy currency you actually need to achieve your homework.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's where it's really important when you're formulating to not just go, well, I'm a naturopath and my code of ethics says to treat the cause and all health begins in the gut and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to take all these foods off you. I'm going to make you eat this way. It just doesn't work. People are tired. And so if you can give them the energy immediately, you basically can break that vicious cycle that's keeping them in that level of fatigue and stuck in that stress and survival mode, allow them to live a quality life while they then live that lifestyle that they need to have the adaptation that we want, which is the genetic expression, the epigenetic expression, which will change their body composition, build muscle, burn fat, support these sort of processes and improve physical, mental performance.
Interesting. And maybe promote that motivation at the same time as feeling good to continue on with that journey of feeling better.
Yeah.
It's just it's kind of like getting a run up to go up a ramp and you don't quite get over the top because you don't have enough energy to get over the top. But if we can get you over the top of that hill, then it's like smooth sailing after that.
Yeah. It's like a lot of things, like in business and that they always talk, 0 to 1 is the hardest bit. You can go from 1 to 100 real quick.
Yeah.
That overnight success that took me 10 years to get to that point.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's where, if we can cut to the chase, so if that 0 to 1, which is that treating the cause, just to get someone into a base, stable state, good foundation to which to launch from, if we can reduce that and give someone some results straight away, it changes absolutely everything. Because you get to feel what it feels like.
Interesting. Well, I've got a question that has actually just come through for me to ask you on the pod. And someone wanted to ask about how would they go about treating microcolitis.
Oh.
Let's go.
Yeah, so basically, the problem is with a lot of these things with the itises on the end, it's an inflammatory condition. When we're looking at inflammation in the colon in particular, what happens, we get this mucousy layer. And it's irritating. It gets across that mucous membrane, makes it harder for the enzymes and everything to go, it makes it harder for the nutrients to be absorbed, then everything basically gets flushed through. The key is initially is to break the cycle. And this is, my advice on this is usually opposite to what everyone else says. So definitely go seek the advice of put in all the disclaimers and don't take the advice of this clown on a podcast over your healthcare professional or face-to-face. But what I typically do is I reduce the amount of things that potentially can ferment in the lower intestine to try to break the cycle, reduce the amount of slimy stuff. So the weird thing is my initial protocol for those is to actually reduce most complex carbohydrates, which is the reason why I said that's weird advice is because I usually go to the doctor saying you should eat a bland diet, just the basic food. That's the sort of words they say too. It's like, what the hell is a bland diet? What's a basic food?
Yeah, I think of rice.
Yeah, exactly, which is a complex carb and typically a resistant starch. And if you've got the wrong gut bugs, it's more likely to ferment and make more of the inflammatory mediators. Rice, potato, all these other starches, the legumes, oats, they're the things I'll often avoid. I'll tell these people to stop because it can often reduce the amount of mucus they've got in the lower part of the colon. And in that instance, I'll tell them to basically eat fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, eggs, cheese, meat, seafood, that sort of stuff. Like getting away from the complex grains until we can get rid of some of that inflammation in the lower bowel. Often breaks a cycle. The other thing I recommend them always to do is do some sort of a test on, like a microbial insight test or some sort of a microbiome genome test to see if there's any particular nasty culprits that may be triggering it. Klebsiella and Clostridium are ones that are often missed, and E. coli, because they're normal bugs. But so we need to do a test to see the doses, which is why I say the genome tests are good, because they tell you if you've got an overgrowth or something that you need to kill. But often you can't tell that until you break the cycle by taking away the complex carbs. Because otherwise everything shows up really high, really active because you're feeding everything. You slow down that, you break the cycle, often that's all you need to do and it can start things to work again.
Super cool.
But otherwise, the way to fix it, supplemental wise, would be to use those short chain fatty acids. So getting into postbiotic, this is why I'm so excited about postbiotics. Because what a postbiotic is, I get a fiber, I specifically select the bugs that I know will feed on that fiber and take it down a particular pathway. And you can almost custom make a postbiotic matrix, meaning that I can create a combination of butyrates and other enzymes, other molecules, vitamins, nutrients, and everything in this postbiotic matrix.
Aminos?
Yeah, aminos, branched chain amino acids. And recent study even showed that the insulin resistance associated with branched chain amino acids, the diabetes that can come from high levels of branched chain amino acids in your bloodstream, typically is made by when you eat too much of it and your gut bugs are already making it. So if you've already got a gut bug microbiome profile that makes branched chain amino acids, pumping it constantly into your bloodstream, and then you're sipping on branched chains as well, between meals, thinking it's going to have a muscle sparing effect or something like that, they're all adding to this pool of stuff that competes with sugar to be burnt as a source of fuel. There's heaps of cool data about this now with these postbiotic metabolites, because we're now realizing this is how one man's medicine's another man's poison, or this is how you can have 80% of stuff right and not get results, maybe even getting worse, because you've got to have that right combination of the microbiome with the food to work with your genetics. So there's a fair bit of trial and error in it, but at the end of the day, nature knows best, and we seem to be coming back across these awesome patterns.
It's interesting because I've done a couple of fasts in the past just for fun and just for the experience. Most of the stuff I do these days is for the experience, see what it's like. And from what I can tell, it's like when you kind of charge your phone, you're kind of told when you first get your phone when you're a kid, it's just like charge it up, charge it all the way to the top, and then let it run all the way out before you charge it again. If you kind of constantly leave it, at 45 to 55%, and you keep it bangs out the battery inside the phone. So I was listening to someone talk the other day about this amino acid pool that we have constantly flowing throughout the body, and if we're constantly just topping up on aminos on a regular basis, we're not only doing some damage to our DNA and our cellular integrity, but it also might be pushing against that longevity aspect. Whereas if we can let it run out, let the gut microbiome supply a lot of what we need and not overdo it, we're not clogging up the system, and we're not pulling up the handbrakes every time we're getting a build up and a blockage somewhere. We're kind of letting it work its way down and then we top up, work its way down and we top up. And a lot of people talk about that with diet too.
Yeah.
Fuel up before you train.
Yep.
Fast until you want to train again. Fuel up before you train, and then fast until you have to do something next time instead of like fueling, because you might be just, the energy might seem like it's life-giving because it does give you energy, but we can probably run on a little bit less than maybe what we think, but as long as we're getting the right quality phytonutrients at the same time, not feeding ourselves food like food.
Yeah, and in fact, that's a big point now that they're starting to, very basically, we've got this big problem with everyone getting diabetes or elevated blood sugar problems. And a lot of it's just the fact that they're not depleting the sugar out of their cells. So, like, we're talking about having too much sugar in your bloodstream. And, like, why would I have too much sugar in my bloodstream, especially when I've just woken up and I haven't eaten for like 12 hours? My fasting blood glucose is high. That's crazy. That's not from the meal you ate the day before. That's just the body's making this glycogen and releasing it as glucose. But if you haven't burned the stored glycogen out of some of your skeletal muscle and out of your liver, well, where's it going to go? It's got to go somewhere, and then it'll typically go to fat otherwise. And if you're stressed, it'll keep it in your bloodstream a bit longer. But so this is the other thing too, when we're talking about those short-chain fatty acids and this tributylin as a source of fuel. Like, if you go through and you do a shoulder workout or something, for example, you'll deplete the glycogen out of those smaller muscle bundles relatively quickly. They'll fatigue out pretty quickly. You can't recruit glycogen from another muscle to put it into that muscle. It just moves on to a different fuel source. And that's when we can start looking at short-chain fatty acids and those sort of other ketones or whatever, which is interesting because the ketones we're talking about is beta-hydroxybutyrate. So it's almost the same molecule. The difference between a ketone and a short-chain fatty acid butyrate is that ketone's typically made in the liver, and that sort of stuff out of the byproducts of burning fat to actually liberate it as a source of fuel. But that butyrate molecule's the common feature that's running through as these ultimate fuel sources for ourselves.
Interesting.
So you'll deplete the glycogen out of the muscles. So even with my polycystic ovarian customers and that I used to deal with, anyone with insulin-resistant syndromes, the one thing I did consistently with them is I flipped their diets around, where I basically got them to focus on exercise that would deplete their glycogen. Mm-hmm. It was all about keeping them glycogen depleted all day if I could. Mm. So deplete your glycogen early, just with exercise and that sort of stuff. Don't replenish it. Don't utilize the glycogen windows to replenish your glycogen, so just keep it low, like eating protein and fats and fiber and that sort of stuff all day. But the key was to backload at night. So what we do then is say, where most people might be thinking a healthy diet would be your carbs in the morning and then don't eat any carbs after a certain time of day and then deplete it, and then I don't understand that. But with the polycystic ovarian, it was the opposite. We go protein, fats and fiber all day, and then we allow them to have all their carbs before bed. And they're like, what? Are you serious? I can have like creamed rice, or I can have like my dessert, I can have like a... And I said, yeah, don't do it all day, but before bed, you can load back up, you load up all your glycogen again, get a nice big serotonin rush, have a really nice deep sleep. But then the key is it's when you're eating through the day, we want you to be glycogen depleted. So you never get these spikes of insulin. And that's how we break the insulin resistant cycles, through exercise and staying glycogen depleted for majority of the day. At night, you're not sleeping, you're not eating. So it's fine for you to have a good levels of sugars at night to reload your glycogen so you can fuel a good deep sleep. Otherwise, you stay stress mode all night, you wake up in the morning and then you start this cycle of insulin and carbs.
I have heard that eating some carbs before bed is a really good way to put you into a nice, restful, deep sleep.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. And shagging too.
Yeah.
That's a different podcast. But
yeah, I actually want to talk about it on another podcast.
Yeah, shit, yeah.
One of the other things that I was thinking about as well, and this comes back to a couple of ingredients that I have listened to, heard about, don't know much about, but I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
Niacinamide.
Yep.
Riboflavin.
Yeah.
Hit me.
Yeah, basic nutrients, essential, when I say basic, these are essential compounds for the Krebs cycle. Our energy production pathway requires them. You'll hear a lot of this stuff about NADH and NAD and FAD and FADH and NMNM. And I can't say it, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Nicotinamide, one of I can't forget. I forgot everything today. Anyway, M&M. That sort of stuff. And they're all getting banned and restricted, and FDA's taken it. They're all basically problems that if we have a deficiency of B2 and B3s. That basic B vitamins, if we don't have it. And the other thing with basic B vitamins, they're water soluble. Mm-hmm. So they're the things that you do need to top up. You don't store them. So if they're not coming through, then you just run out. And we have very little doses. Like, we don't need much, but we need it regularly. We need it consistently. Daily. You have a day where it's gone, you don't have it, you can't do those things. That's what I talk about with essential. You can't make it. You can't compensate for it. So most of these studies that are showing people benefiting from NADH supplementation and NMNs and all these flash supplements that drive the Krebs cycle, most of those people have got a temporary deficiencies of these basic B vitamins. So before you go bother doing these expensive compounds that drive a particular function for that, make sure you've got enough of that vitamin to do all of its functions and top that up in its most basic form. That's why I love adding those basic things. And you'll find with athletes in particular, or people that stress a lot, think a lot, people that are going through phases of increased physical, mental demand, it's these water-soluble nutrients that they're depleting at such a fast rate. Because these things are catalysts for reactions, meaning that they'll stimulate the process of a conversion into a neurotransmitter or a conversion of one fuel source to another fuel source to liberate the energy that we need. And this is where they're used up so quickly and so frequently. And there's so many pathways happening all the time. But when we're stressed, when we're busy, when you're doing a bit extra, you deplete through them so much faster. When you're sweating more, when you're drinking more and weeing more and all that sort of stuff that you do when you're a busy athlete or an entrepreneur or something like that, these are the things that you'll run out. And from one day to another, if you're feeling, I thought I was going really good, I was getting so fit, and now today I'm flat, sometimes it's those little basic water-soluble vitamins that you've just missed. Not the big things, but these little things.
I feel that for sure.
And minerals are the same. Like when we're looking at colloidal minerals and ratios between these minerals, even the big ones, like the electrolytes and that, because they control all the electrical charges. They're going to determine the positive and negative charges around your cells, and that determines where the water lives. And that can often determine from one day to the next if you're waking up with your cells feeling full and plump and round like grapes, or if they're like a sultana and nothing in there. And that's where minerals and vitamins, these water-soluble nutrients that determine the ratios between intracellular, extracellular water, where we're dragging the nutrients, and they also regulate all the positive and negative charges that run inside and outside our cells, which is how our energy production works.
Excellent. So a lot of these things, in my mind, just looking at this from a standpoint that I want to try and be, up and ready on the go every day. I want to work out. I want to go and work. I want to go and do these fun things. The lifestyle is a daily occurrence. We need to live the lifestyle on a daily basis. We can't live the lifestyle for, a healthy lifestyle for 5 days a week and then screw it over the weekend. Same thing goes with nutrition. It has to be part of that lifestyle that we're getting topped up on a regular basis. It's like we need to breathe every, hopefully no more. We're not breathing every 2 seconds, but we're breathing every 10 seconds or so. And then we want to make sure that we're topping up on all of these essential soluble vitamins that we're probably not getting on a regular basis, and minerals. So this is a daily thing that we want to do. Seeking sunlight on a daily basis to make sure we can, we're getting that first bit of morning sun, making sure that we can doze off and go to bed, and everything seems to be on a regular basis. A little bit of citrulline every day, a little bit of these short chain fatty acids every day. It's not like a do it for a day hard and then screw it for 2 weeks. Because then you're going to feel shit for 2 weeks.
And that's what I've always struggled with a lot of the research that's driving for ingredients for pre-workouts. Because they're designed to have an effect once off. We're just going to bang, throw this in and see what happens in this performance.
So it skyrockets you and then leaves you in the lurch later.
Yeah, or it's all totally irrelevant. If you did an 8-gram dose of citrulline every day, for example, it's going to totally screw around with your kidneys and your ability to actually manage arginine levels, because you're going to have this constant precursor for your arginine release. We don't know what happens if we backlog the glutamine. Glutamine's also a precursor to a lot of other things like ornithines and whatever. So I don't like the idea of screwing around with anything in too high a dose. And in nature, these things are never found in that dose isolated, singular. They're always part of a protein food that has a variety of amino acids in certain ratios. Often even these things are found joined within a peptide together, like that they get absorbed whole, not even working as single amino acids. So I like the idea of using the relatively lower doses more in line with what's in nature and as part of a healthy, normal diet, where this is not your sole source of nutrition. You're also having other sources of protein that'll compensate for the other amino. Same with the B vitamins. It's always better to take a B complex, but it's not always the place to put a full B complex in every product, because we're going to overdose on certain things, and certain things we need to be just B2 and B3, for example, might make a place into an energy production pathway. But you wouldn't necessarily have to put the whole B complex into that. But throughout your day, throughout your diet, you definitely need the exposure to the full B complex. You know what I mean?
So interesting.
Yeah, it gets tricky, but the thing is you want to have a wicked strategy where you have a short-term boost and benefit and gives you what you need to break that cycle that you're stuck in, or to get you to that next level of your training or commitment to your diet. You need the energy to do that, which is why that's why I love things like tributerins or that sort of stuff that'll come in as an energy source. That's not just a carb or a protein. It comes in, it's a good catalyst to force things to happen, like fuels the process that we want to do. Then loading up with B vitamins and minerals and that sort of stuff that hydrates into those cells, it just gets all that charge happening, just fires it up, it gets a spark happening. Things like Schisandra, that's like a beautiful adaptogenic herb. And when you're stressed and anxious, it'll calm you down. If you're down and flat, it picks you up. But knowing that it does that by making your fuel efficiency better. And this is why when you read about Schisandra is such a great herb, because it'll go brilliant for your brain, brilliant for your lungs, brilliant for your liver, brilliant for your muscles, brilliant for your vasculature. Hey, it's really good for your heart. My God, we've got fertility studies on it. It's good for everything. Oh, not surprised. Every cell has an energy warehouse, a mitochondria, and if Schisandra is improving the efficiency of that energy production within that cell, wherever that cell may be found, Schisandra may be tonifying that organ. And this is how Schisandra is so cool to cover so many things, because it improves the efficiency, the energy production and everything, reducing the metabolic waste created and improving the energy efficiency of that cell, so the cell works better, which is why your brain works better, lung works better, liver works better. Those sort of things work better when you're using a food like Schisandra.
Wow, that is mind-blowing.
Yeah, pomegranate. Pomegranate, I love it. Now, pomegranate juice has an acute short-term effect as a source of a nitrate, where it works like a citrulline to support nitric oxide vasodilation. But that's the short-term acute effects of pomegranate, which is why when they do studies on pomegranate juice with cyclists or something, can show improvement there. Pomegranate also contains these things called elagitannins, which are precursors after the bugs feed on elagitannins. They convert them into these compounds called urolithins. Urolithins is the magic that's found in things like shilajit, pomegranate, maca, a lot of these things, oak barrels, fermented foods and that sort of stuff. The old scotches and whiskies and red wines, they all contain urolithins, and urolithins stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis. They help the mitochondria to have more mitochondria per cell, so you're capable of recycling more of that waste and making more clean and efficient energy. So it's kind of cool when you start looking at these wicked things that you can easily incorporate into a protocol where you'll get acute effects, like now, and then over time you get better. As opposed to using some sort of a pharmaceutical agent or some sort of a bullshit stimulant or something that's going to give you the acute effects now but make you worse over time. This is the sort of thing give you acute effects now and then makes you gradually better over time. It's the sort of thing you want to be doing daily, not the sort of thing you want to be doing just 3 times a week, Oh,
I'm so fired up about it. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that makes me excited. Far out.
That was pretty cool, man.
It's super cool. Those so I think we're on the wavelength here, or the frequency now that a lot of people are talking about. Number one, short chain fatty acids and the compounds, those postbiotics that are doing freaking wonders for the body. We're looking into holistic health, which is now going to be popping up as epigenetics throughout the next couple of years.
Anti-aging, epigenetic aging now.
Yeah.
Epigenetic is the science word for holistic.
Yep.
So all us naturopaths have been saying it for years, and now the medical scientific world wants to get in on it. They're going, we can't use their word. They're going to go, I told you so.
Yeah.
So they've got, no, it's epigenetic expression.
So, and that on top of it, anyone that's looking to be a high performer in any field, regardless of whether, I'm not talking about competition field, but high performer on a day-to-day basis as a dad or a mum, high performance human in general, high performance athlete, high performance business person, high performance entrepreneur. You're looking to get in quality nutrients on a regular basis. You're looking to turbocharge, making sure you're getting your microbiome in check, your lifestyle in check, your training in check, your nutrition's on point, making sure you're doing all the right things as nature intended, sunlight, rest, breath, all these things compile to turbocharging your whole being, making you feel happy.
And that's your crew.
Yeah.
Meaning you're awesome and you want to be awesomer.
Yeah.
There's also a whole other group there that's sick of feeling tired and just tired of feeling sick, that is sitting just below par, that just need that little bit of something to get them to break the cycle.
Yes.
So that they're capable of even considering taking on to that next step of being a high-performing entrepreneur or a high-performing domestic executive or goddess, or you know what I mean, or an everyday athlete, weekend warrior.
And that's something I think gets overlooked a lot. And I think the majority of people are probably sitting in this day and age on that side of the hill.
Yeah.
And we want to try
subclinical. They're going in testing things, going, oh no, you're within the range. You're perfectly fine, and you've got this symptom picture that suggests you're something not quite right, but you're within the range. So let's just keep testing and waiting for you to get a disease. So for the people that just need a little bit of oomph to break the cycle, this is the sort of stuff that's really going to benefit them, because it's too slow and long a process to work by changing over the whole gut microbiome, diet, lifestyle, and the whole holistic system before they start feeling change.
And it's compounding in any direction. If you let them go longer, it's harder to break that cycle. And if we can get them out of that cycle earlier, then we'll compound in the right direction faster. So I think we're on the right wavelength here, and I think a lot of people are going to start really seeing these postbiotic short-chain fatty acids, all these really cool compounds, seeing it just slip into mainstream chat more and more and more.
Yeah.
Freaking excited
and getting a bit annoyed with the quick fix. I think
it's
only so many days you can wake up and use an artificial stimulant or something to pretend to give you energy.
Until you hit a wall and you're just like, oh shit, now I'm really in the hole.
And we don't have much of these sort of concepts in Western medicine, but in Ayurvedic or in traditional Chinese medicine, we'll talk about the rasa-ranyas, or we'll talk about the kidney jings and that sort of stuff, or we'll talk about the overflowing cup or the empty cup, where most people are hovering between overflowing or empty, where they're either anxious and inflamed or they're fatigued and buggered. So this is the challenge that we have, is most people are kind of hovering in a state of dysfunction or dis-ease, not in disease, but dis-ease. And in this instance, sometimes just something to break the cycle is all they need.
It's freaking wild. Well, guys, we're gonna wrap that up. Episode 16 of the Phyba Performance Podcast, talking about all the cool stuff. We will see you guys next time. We have a really cool guest jumping on for our next podcast, so we're excited to bring it out to you soon. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Woohoo!